So it's already been about 10 years since Tesla launched the Model 3 and the car has come a long way. I've personally been daily driving the Model 3 for about 2 years now, so in this video I'll share my long-term experience as a first-time electric vehicle owner. The first ever EV that I bought is the long-range Tesla Model 3, which I still have, and then more recently I took delivery of the new Model 3 Performance. You might think because I ended up buying another Model 3 that I must love Teslas, but that's not exactly the case. There's actually quite a few things that I don't like. So I'm going to break down this video in a few parts, covering things like the things that I've disliked, the things that I love, how much it costs to run the car, reliability, and how the battery has held up so far. I'll be talking about my experience with both Model 3s, but with a bit more focus on the performance model since that's the car that I drive more frequently now. Let's start with the changes that I've made to the cars. The most obvious is the color PPF wrap on this Model 3 Performance and also a clear PPF wrap on the Model 3 Long Range. There's a few reasons I decided to wrap the cars, but I'm really glad I did. So the Model 3 Performance here is originally black, but when I first took delivery, the paint job and swirl marks were honestly pretty bad. The paint on the Model 3 is just so soft, and Tesla is unfortunately notoriously known for this. I straight away booked in a service appointment in the app, which is something I love about Tesla. Almost everything can be done conveniently through the app, and I'll speak about this later in this video. But yeah, I booked it in, and the local Tesla team were so good about it. They immediately booked in a rebuff, gave me a loan car, and a week later, they basically returned my car with literally no swirl marks. As you can see here, it's actually a pretty decent job that they've done. So my recommendation here is if you take delivery of a Tesla with a poor paint job, definitely book in a service follow-up through the app as early as you can. But just like my long range Model 3, which I've had for a couple years, swirl marks are bound to happen to black cars, so I felt like a wrap made a lot of sense. The guys over at Signature Wraps recommended a color PPF, and I chose the satin dark gray color here, and I just think it looks so much better and more aggressive in this wrap. I also took the chance to chrome delete the Tesla emblem for a matte black finish and look on both the back and the front. So far, the wrap has held up really well with no bubbling or peeling, and that's, I think, thanks to the guys at Signature Wrap. I had the chance to watch them wrap a couple of panels, and their attention to detail and hand cutting of the wrap is so well done. They don't use template cutouts, so the hand cutting really helps give that stock out of the factory look. If you're based in Sydney and you're looking to get a car wrapped, I'll leave a link to Signature Wraps down below. I highly recommend them. I think they do a great job with their hand wraps and they're super friendly as well. So yeah, if you reach out to them, let them know that you saw them through this video. Just before we move on to the negatives about the Tesla, Monday.com is kindly sponsoring this segment of the video. We've used Monday.com, a project management software, for a couple of years to collaborate with remote teams to help produce videos like the one you're watching now. It's an all-in-one workspace where we oversee the full video production and project timeline from the shot list, editing, color grading, and thumbnail. We can even see the workload for each team member and assign production tasks based on who has capacity. It's sort of like having a personal assistant overseeing the entire project and all the daily tasks involved. The automation features are also amazing in saving time for repetitive tasks. For example, when the video edit is complete, I'll tick it off and Monday.com will automatically update statuses, send out files, and Slack messages to the team. This way, I don't need to spend half an hour updating everyone manually to be able to finalize the video. And the time zone and world clock features also make it easier to work with remote freelancers, so we all have a clear overview of the remaining tasks in different time zones. So if you're working on projects and you're looking to boost productivity and keep your projects super organized, Monday.com is definitely worth checking out. You can try out Monday.com for free through the link in the description box below. So aside from the poor paint job, there's actually quite a few negatives I have to share after driving the Teslas over a combined 20,000 miles or so in 2 years. Firstly, the auto wipers. The auto wipers are just so bad and they're stupidly annoying. They'll switch on and wipe the bone dry windscreen like every second or third drive. And this happens on both the long range and the Highland Performance. The first few times it happens, it's kind of like, yeah, whatever. But when it constantly switches on once every second drive, it's pretty annoying. It's odd that Tesla hasn't found a fix for this yet. And I'll probably mention this at the next service myself. The rear visibility in this car isn't great either. I can't see the car behind me at stoplights unless they're a few car lengths away, but you do get used to it pretty quickly and you can just use this useful rear camera to see behind the car, which I've mapped to the shortcuts on the bottom of the display. Speaking of the interior, you either like it or you don't, depending on how you view it. On one hand, it's great that it's super clean and it's minimal, but at the same time, the trim quality just isn't going to be on the same quality bar of a BMW, Audi, or Mercedes, especially on pre-Highland models like my long range. There's even random interior rattles and squeaks time to time on that car. And after being in this cabin for 2 years across 2 Teslas, I miss having a heads-up display, physical AC controls, and the stalks. Whenever I step into the Performance, I'm reminded of how much I really do miss the stalks in the long range. Swiping up and down on the display is just so much slower to reverse or park, and sometimes even hazardous. Then there is Tesla's lack of full self-driving. Don't even get me started here. I'm sure you know the story at this point. It doesn't work like it should, and it looks like we're still quite a while away until Tesla gets to the full level 5 self-driving. Most of my friends who jump into the Tesla assume it can completely drive itself, and yeah, it can't. It's more like a slightly advanced lane keep and cruise control at the moment, but we might be seeing some big advancements in Tesla's FSD software soon, according to Tesla. I'll also say that if you live in an apartment block like I did, charging can be pretty inconvenient and turns into a negative. If you live in a property with access to an outlet or a garage, then charging shouldn't be a problem at all. The last negative I should share is more subjective, but I just don't feel like the Model 3 has a lot of emotion as a performance car, especially on the track. If you want a point A to point B daily car, this won't matter to you at all. The Model 3 is amazing for that, but as an enthusiast and as a performance car, it's just not there. I was lucky enough to test the Audi RS5 competition on the track the other week. That car can run laps of the circuit all day without a sweat, and not to mention the car's sound and steering feedback is incredible on the track, especially at high speeds. It really puts a smile on your face. Meanwhile, the Model 3 Performance overheats instantly on the track and the stock brakes just don't cut it at high speeds. It's really disappointing when it's a car that's marketed as something that you can take onto the track. It has a track mode, it has adaptive dampening, updated aeros and staggered wheels. So if you're hoping to take a Tesla on the track, specifically the Model 3 Performance, I wouldn't really bother unless you sink some serious cash into making changes to brakes, coilovers, and suspension. I've also driven the Audi RS e-tron GT, and that's a far better performance electric car by a long shot. But then again, if track days don't matter to you, this probably won't even be a negative, because on the curvy back-end roads, this car is a blast at legal speeds and handles incredibly well if you want your daily car to have some fun once in a while. Alright, so that's all the negatives I've experienced out of the way. Let's talk about what I've loved so far. The tech. So the tech in this car is incredible and absolutely a highlight. Things like Sentry Mode, which automatically records from all 7 cameras when someone comes close to the parked Tesla or when I beep the horn, to being able to watch Netflix or even play video games on road trips and in the back screen for passengers are genuinely awesome quality of life features. Being able to control everything on the Tesla remotely from my phone and having keycard access to lock, unlock, and drive the car is such a treat as well. For short trips like grocery runs, I don't even bother bringing keys. I just jump into the car and the phone locks and unlocks the car for me based on proximity. And even small touches in the cabin, like when passengers are watching content on the rear screen Audio is actually played back in the rear speakers and directionally points to only the rear passengers, so I can actually hardly hear the music or videos they're playing. And outside of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, the Tesla infotainment system and navigation is probably the best car system that I've used so far. Everything is just so well integrated, and the live Google Maps and traffic integration hasn't missed a beat over the last couple of years. It's just a bit of a shame that it is a subscription model for the premium features like live traffic on Google Maps. It is a minor fee. It is totally worth the price, but yeah, it is a bit of a shame that it is a subscription. So yeah, overall, the tech in this car is still one of the best in the industry, and it's one of the rare few cars that you can wake up to in the morning, the next morning, and it's literally improved through software updates by simply hooking the car up to a Wi-Fi connection. There's even been some really big software updates over the last 2 years that I remember that have transformed the user interface, given the Model 3 adaptive matrix LED headlights and even new apps. So ride quality, I've yet to run into an issue with ride quality as a daily car. And in fact, it is the most comfortable car that I've ever driven by a long shot. Once you start daily driving a silent electric vehicle with its very smooth electric powertrain, it's honestly kind of hard to go back to an engine with all its gears, parts, fuel, and of course emissions. And on top of being super comfortable to drive, chances are driving a Model 3 means you're driving one of the zippiest cars on the road at any given time. Yes, that even includes the base model. It's that fast. The instant torque and very fast acceleration doesn't get old off the stoplights or merging onto the highway. It's hard to describe this linear power band until you give it a test drive yourself, but it's basically a roller coaster that keeps pulling without any stutter. It's plenty of performance for the average driver to have some fun in, and also super comfortable for long road trips with a family or in daily commutes to work. I've also found one-pedal driving and regenerative braking as a great way to drive comfortably day to day. It's not as engaging, but I personally find it satisfying to lift off the accelerator at the right time and ease off to a stop exactly at the right spot on the road. Regenerative braking also feeds the energy back into the battery for longer range before you need to charge, and prevents brake pad wear if you can manage to drive exclusively with just one foot and never use the brakes. So there's a lot to love with the Tesla Model 3, but what about ownership costs? Well, it's a bit of a double-edged sword actually, because this car costs me next to nothing to run, but it does have some hidden costs. Charging at home with a standard wall outlet costs me a rough average of 5 cents a mile during off-peak charging times, and about $20 for a full charge at home for the Model 3 Performance. I was paying triple this easily for the same mileage in the base Mercedes A-Class car that I had previously. So I'm saving a couple $1,000s every year on gas, petrol costs, and slightly more if we also consider oil costs. There are also plenty of free destination charges depending on where you are, and the Tesla supercharging network has been pretty incredible and reliable enough that I almost never have to worry about range. When I'm going on a road trip, all I do is plug in the destination and send it to my Tesla via the phone, and it'll calculate the most effective route where I need to stop and charge. And the cost of a supercharger is anywhere between $20 to $30 for me, depending on the state of the charge. And it's also worth mentioning, this is a big positive. Tesla is continuing to improve the supercharger network, and they're rolling out version 4 superchargers, which even offers over-the-air software updates when you're charging, and a 40% charge in only 10 minutes. So just like the car, the charging network, the Tesla charging network, is continuing to improve, which is great to see. When it comes to servicing and maintenance costs, this has been close to basically zero, and that's incredible. Since there's no engine in the car, Tesla gets away with minimal servicing, and I believe the only thing that Tesla does recommend to do is rotate the car tires every 5,000 to 6,000 miles, replace the cabin air filter, brake fluid, and that's about it. I was quoted $250 in the app for that maintenance, which is recommended only every 2 years. But yeah, $250 across 2 years for maintenance is practically nothing compared to my previous ICE cars that cost me an arm and a leg every year for servicing, at least $3,000, $4,000. The tires might need to be replaced more frequently because Teslas are heavier than average cars, and the instant torque can wear your tires out real quick if you love accelerating in the car. The double-edged sword, though, actually comes from the crazy expensive insurance. The Tesla Model 3 is an expensive car to insure, especially here in Australia. It's the top 5 most expensive car brand to insure, actually. To give you an idea, I'm paying close to $2,500 a year to insure the Model 3 Performance. That's more than insuring an Audi RS5 or even a Jaguar F-Type. So the reason for this is because Teslas use specialized parts that are expensive to replace, and they need special technicians, and the biggest part of the car, the battery, is the most expensive component to replace. And so for $2,500, that almost cancels out the savings that I get from the low servicing costs. The other thing is depreciation. I think it's no secret that Teslas depreciate really quickly for many reasons. So I bought the long range model for, I think it was roughly $85,000 Australian with a few options. And looking at car sales platforms now, they're now going for $55,000, and that's a huge $30,000 depreciation drop. So yeah, if you worry about depreciation, that is definitely something you want to take into consideration. All right, so let's talk about the Tesla's reliability over the 2 years. So the Model 3 has a big battery, and the lithium ion that powers most EVs lose battery capacity over time. So like mobile phones, batteries degrade and the maximum charge slowly falls. So to check the battery degradation accurately, for the sake of this video, I put the older Tesla long range into service mode to check the battery details. The health check takes 24 hours, and this long range reported only 2% battery degradation after almost a couple years. How fast your battery degrades will depend on many factors, like how often you drive the car and your charging patterns. But I read that you can expect a 5 to 10% battery degradation after the first 100,000 miles. And then after that initial drop, the battery stabilizes and the degradation slows down quite a lot. So even if I do lose 10% in battery, that's about a 30 mile or 50 kilometer drop on the performance, a little more in the long range, but I've been charging it in the garage whenever it drops below 40%. So the loss in mileage isn't that big of a deal for me unless I'm going on a really long road trip. I think current Teslas sold come with a battery warranty that covers 70% capacity for 8 years or the first 120,000 miles. So yeah, it shouldn't really be something to worry about. Reliability, both Tesla Model 3s have never broken down. I wish I had something to report on here, but they've just been completely reliable. Components are still working fine from day one. And if anything, it's just a car that improves with over-the-air software updates. It's been super reliable. And so all I've had to do is fill the wiper fluid a few times, run a cabin air filter check, brake fluid check, and that's literally about it. Even if there were an issue, I wouldn't hesitate to pop open the Tesla app and book in an appointment. It's about as convenient as it gets. And my experience heading over to the Tesla service center has been great. They really take care of you, or at least in my experience, because I have heard of bad stories of experiences at Tesla service centers, but in my case, they've been perfectly great. So overall, transitioning to an EV and daily driving a Tesla has been one of the best decisions that I've made. Looking at the cost of ownership, the ease and convenience of the car, the great performance to cost ratio, and the high safety rating, it's just absolutely a daily car that I recommend. If you have a short commute with easy access to chargers and you're looking for a new car, I think a Tesla Model 3 should be on your consideration list. Brand new, they're not cheap, and if money is holding you back, there is potentially value in looking at a second-hand Tesla Model 3 that has already taken the bulk of the depreciation hit, but are still as reliable as ever. I reckon for most people, once you change over to an EV, you won't go back, but I do believe there's still a place for internal combustion engine cars in the enthusiast and motorsport side of things. But like out in the real world, living with a car, commuting, road tripping with your family, it's really hard pressed to look past an EV like the Tesla Model 3. And I just really hope you get the chance to drive and test not just a Tesla, but any EV out there if you've never had a chance to. There are so many fantastic EVs out there now, and they make for a great, reliable vehicle rather than a liability. If you found this video useful, drop a like, and if you're new here, please feel free to subscribe. If you're a Tesla owner yourself, I'd love to hear your own experience with your Model 3 or even X, Y, or S down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.